Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022 Wells Fargo Championship DraftKings picks. Preview, play the best plays, and I'm going to give away my bets at the end of today's show, or in the time codes if that's what you want to do, because there is no newsletter this week. There is no live chat this week. If you're looking for a Wednesday show, Kentucky Derby picks with myself, Ben Raza, and Cam Stewart. And then plus a whole bunch of stuff next week, including the Custy Awards coming out on Monday. It's a long show, but it's a fun show. You'll get a few laughs. Remember to smash the like button to the episode, sub to Mayo Media Network on YouTube, subscribe to the audio podcast, leave a rating and review, and down in the comment section, please give me your two favorite plays below $7,000 this week on DraftKings, and become a member at fantasynational.com today at fantasynational.com/Mayo. All the stats, all the info, the lineup generator, the simulations, it's all there for you. fantasynational.com/Mayo. Tyler Tamboline, Toe Tag and Tambo, is in studio with me. We thought we'd do it today.
Yeah.
Rather than, we're not going to do a live chat. We might as well talk through, because I really enjoyed it. I think people like this format more. A little bit of, hey, here's the 10s, here are the 9s, although we will be doing that. But just to talk through a few ideas. We don't have the viewer chat, which does lead to some actually interesting conversations, I think.
Yeah.
Most of the Wednesday. So tune into that. We'll be back for the PGA Championship live chat. Mayo and Roz will be in studio to do the breakdown for the major championship for DraftKings as well. But I do want to remind everyone to both play in the Fantasy Golf Degenerates Listeners League, fill that, but especially fill up the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League. It's more than half full already. If we fill it by Tuesday evening, I think we'll get the full 100K for the PGA Championship. So that'll be nice.
Yeah, we want to see that for sure. Love that rake-free money. It's always a good contest to get into. And for the majors, that's what we're trying to build up as they go on. So it's nice to see.
New course. Well, not new course this year. It's TPC Potomac rather than Quail Hollow. Quail Hollow will be the President's Cup site this year. So rather than Eagle Point for the Wells Fargo, they're going back to Potomac, the Quicken Loans national site for 2017, 2018. Kyle Stanley, Francesco Molinari, both winners at that course. It's under 7,200 yards. It's a par 70, driving accuracy at a premium. Do you feel like that's going to put an emphasis on the exact same guys down the list? Like, is everyone's low 7,000s going to be exactly the same this week?
It's definitely going to be congested. We talk about the Party Marty Lairds. When we get down there, of course, Ryan Armour.
I bet Party Marty Laird.
I did as well. He's on my card. I know you're saving the bets to the end, but the Laird 140 I found was just too good to pass up, and maybe it's a reason I can go off him in DraftKings this week. But I just think, like you said, when people are looking at it, they're going to look back and see the Kyle Stanley year, talk about Team No Putt. We're going to hear same narratives, at least. I do think this field's a little bit trickier than the last couple of weeks, where there is still other guys. We definitely have a bit stronger field, so people can find different angles to get off certain spots.
The issue is going to be, and when you reference Team No Putt, I'm on Team No Putt this week as well, and I think it actually makes a lot of sense. These are some of the smallest greens on tour.
Yep.
It's just really hard to 3-putt them, and that's really what we're thinking about. Yeah, you got to make your 8-footers for par and for birdie to get up there, but maybe Luke List can try to find a way to 3-putt from 25 feet, but very few guys are going to be able to do that. So short game, I think, actually kind of plays in a lot here.
Yeah, big time. And just scrambling in general, besides just around the green like you're talking about there, but just scrambling. Like if you go, we're going to talk about accuracy, of course, at this course, but if you go off the beaten path, it's like you're in the actual woods, right? We talked about that last night. That's a problem. And for a lot of guys that aren't that accurate, there is the potential, if you listen to the quotes from guys that have played this course multiple times, they talk about how there is a real ticket, one-way ticket to a bogey train, and it can just not stop. So you don't want to get on that train by any means here, and it's something that we're going to have to look to avoid when choosing guys.
Accuracy over distance is going to be the play this week. Everyone kind of knows that. The difficult thing to parse, and I tried to look through this on my research show of using the Fantasy National filter of having 7,200 yards, like under that, do guys improve in accuracy who are like, does Rory get better at shorter courses in terms of accuracy? We always think about like Woodland when that comes to mind, that he plays these short courses well. He improves his accuracy when he clubs down. So I think that could be a potential leverage spot this week. If everyone is going pure accuracy, can you go with a bomber and then try to dig in a little bit deeper? It's like, oh yeah, this guy hits 0 fairways, but when you take driver out of his hand, he hits every single fairway. Like that could be a key here.
Yeah, anything like that where you can find just a simple leverage spot for a reasoning that you can make that makes sense. I'm all about that. So I know you're going to look into that stuff more and you bring it up, but I think that's a key component. And like a guy like Woodland, who you mentioned, who I last week sat in the studio with here, said I just didn't like the play. Of course, he ended up coming back on the weekend, but it was the same situation. Now I think this is actually a better spot, surprisingly, as much as he can be long off the tee. Here, like you mentioned, we love Gary at a club down course, a little bit tougher track. He's a U.S. Open champion. That's where heavy rough and things like that is involved.
At a club down course, too. A very short U.S. Open at Pebble Beach.
That's what I mean. So I think that's where you're looking for certain angles to pick up spots. And then we talked a little bit pre-show, but some of these guys in these ranges just have 2 or 3 guys in them that are going to be so popular that you'll get 12, 13% on a guy. But if another guy right around him is 20%, you can still go down to him and get a little bit more leverage.
Well, you were speaking. I actually just loaded up a mixed condition model on Fantasy National to see. I did fairways gained over the past 50 rounds overall, and then fairways gained on courses less than 7,200 yards. So to see if there's any sort of distinction between that. If we go by price, Austin Cook is great on both. Rory does get better. He's 76th in the field overall, but 55th when you take that down a little bit. Who vastly? Connors really improves. Keegan Bradley really improves. He goes from 84th to 26th this week. Gary Woodland improves 120th to 78th. So it's been a bad run for him. So he's not super accurate, but he is a little bit better when we start looking at things in that term. Like that's really what we're looking at here. Other huge outliers. Henrik Norlander's a huge outlier who's better on the short courses. Webb Simpson, Lucas Glover, Keegan Bradley, Troy Merritt, Mark Hubbard all fit that. Alex Smalley fits that, although he doesn't really have that many rounds to play around with. The biggest mover is Jonas Blixt, but good Lord, those stats are probably from like 2007 or something like that. And Sam Ryder, gets a little bit better as well, along with Rory. So those are the guys to kind of look at that way. If we do the reverse search, you're going to find a lot of bad players. Sung Kang, who is like Mr. DraftKings this week with his top 5 finishes at this course. He goes from 51st to 123rd, which is just bizarre considering how much success he's had at this course. Keith Mitchell gets a lot worse. He's better off just ripping it with his driver. He's more accurate than trying to club down, apparently. Vegas gets worse. Danny Lee, Max Homa gets worse. Pat Perez, he withdrew, so no worries about him. Lahiri gets worse. McGirt gets worse. Who else do we have here? Ben Martin gets really bad. Seamus Power gets a lot worse in that circumstance, as does Lee Hodges. So those are the types of names, good and bad, that we can both look for. I don't know if that's... Look, I don't know if that's going to be translatable or not, if 50 is enough of a range, it's too big of a range, but I think something like that is worth looking for if we're trying to find a leverage point of if everyone is going around the same, like I said, $70, $100 player, Bo Hostler, Martin Laird, all those guys, that trying to find an out like that makes a bit more sense to me.
Yeah, and I just threw that out on my Twitter because the $7,100 range has 6 guys in it. Like, it just seems like more than normal of what we've been used to. And even the past few weeks, when we have had stroke play events, forget the team event, but you've had ranges where it'd be like 2 or 3 guys down there. You're not used to seeing 6 down there. So I think, like you said, any of that stuff you're bringing up. Seamus Power was one that you brought up that I thought was a bit interesting because I've been wavering back and forth on this guy. I love his talent. Obviously won the Barbasol, I believe it was, over JT Poston in the playoff, pressuring him out of the bunker and all that. So it used to be a thing with him where easier courses, he got it done. Went through a stretch like the API Genesis that did not do well, and then he came back at the Players, did have the good weather draw, but still, the Players, tougher track, and then the Masters, and did like a top 33 at both. Now he's priced at 8,300. I thought maybe this could be a better spot for him, and then he parses out a little bit different to your numbers.
So there are 2 guys that I think that we should really look at here in terms of being outliers, very good at shorter courses, get them on bent grass, at least over the past 18 months have been a lot better. And one of them's in the $10,000 range, so I suppose we can start there. If we go through the entire 10Ks, Rory is going to be the favorite, although he is priced as they're playing this at Quail Hollow. Like, the odds reflect that. People are talking about he's the 3-time winner of this event, which is true, just not at this course. Yeah. So that's a bit baked into the Rory love this week until people figure that out. So Rory, Finau, Answer, Connors, Fitzpatrick. Those are the 5 guys above $10,000. Connors probably going to be the most owned guy. He's definitely going to be the most owned guy above $10,000. Could be the highest owned guy on the entire slate. I bet him to win. I'm still playing Corey Connors. I don't really care. It's going to be like 23%. It's not going to be a ROM 50%.
Right.
So you can pick and choose with what you want to do. I'll just be wildly overweight. Then you have Answer, and Webb Simpson is the other guy I wanted to bring into this mix. Because we don't really know what's up with these two. I've bet Answer to win. I kind of talked myself into him on the show yesterday. I liked, at least statistically, what I saw from him in Mexico. It all made sense. He lost 7 strokes around the green.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not going to happen again. So as long as he's accurate, like he does the same thing that Corey Connors does, except he putts. So why not? If I'm in on Connors, I got to be in on Answer. Pairing those two skills together, I think works out really well. And then with Webb, the shorter the course, the better he gets.
Yeah, with Webb, it's been a challenge. You and I have talked about him plenty on this show, going back and forth with the injury stuff, waiting on it. Paul Tesori saying certain things, trying to figure out what we can with this guy. And it's sort of improved some since the last time we've talked. But going back to Answer for a second up top, I think that this is just a pure case. Look at Finau right above him, Answer there just above Connors. This course sets up way better for Answer, and I think way worse for Tony Finau. That's the pitch at least I made last night with Kenny Kim on the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast was Finau had a great weekend, but before he was able to spray it out there. It was off the tee, sort of do his thing. Of course, he still looked good with those long irons and made some putts finally over the weekend. But this course should set up way better for Answer. And all we were waiting to see on Abraham Answer last week was whether or not he was healthy and could come back and bounce back and have a decent week. He had a decent week, but the course was long. This one, the accuracy is going to play into his hand, I think. And so as a pivot off of Connors there, or play them both, whatever you want to do, I think he's definitely an option here at the top.
I'm going Connors Answer. Those are the two that I'm playing above. I know Fitz is going to draw a ton of ownership as well. That makes sense. I think that he is actually a very good fit for this course if you wanted to work him in, and I think it'll depend on how many lineups I end up going with, but if I'm going 20, no Fitzpatrick. If I play 50, my biggest thing is with Rory. Do I play Rory?
Yeah. That's where I was struggling as well. Like I said, I'm playing Rory. I think he just played too good at the Masters, showed what he did. Like, he didn't make the mistakes down the stretch that we were used to or expecting.
Yeah, but he wasn't contending.
Exactly, that's true. At 11.5, I think it's odd because it's $200 more than Rahm was last week as a plus 350
Which
favorite
is crazy.
in a much weaker field. It makes no sense to me. It is still a $900 gap. The more interesting piece is what you said with Connors, and I just said the same thing you said. I'm just going to get wildly overweight. Eat it. I don't care. Maybe it's a bad play. We'll see how things shake out with the numbers come sort of Wednesday evening when I'm building lineups. But for me, it was Rory and Connors, and then I was deciding between Abe and Fitz. And I think I'm just leaning that more and more people are going to eventually gradually get some of the Connors ownership down to Fitz.
Maybe, but looking at it right now, looking at the ownership, you can get Answer at least projection-wise right now in terms of ownership. It's Tuesday morning, so this can change. Answer's half or less of what
that's what I'm
Fitzpatrick
saying.
is.
I think he's going to be the least owned. It wasn't close. We said the same thing last night, and that's where I was sort of debating it. But with Answer just setting up so well, so much better, I should say, for this course and how well he can play and have the upside, it's not like he can't go out and win. He won a WGC last year. This is not the same field size, but it's also not the same field strength. So chop off a bunch of these guys at the bottom, and I think Answer could get to the top of this field.
Look at this. Fantasy National updated itself for, when you go to the player profile page and you can see like Bent, Bermuda, Poa, and those would be the three. Like, do they gain? Do they lose? Whatever. That Paspalum's on there now too. So we have the one weighted event. Answer pretty good on Paspalum, great on Bent.
Yeah.
One of the bigger flips of overall putting to bent grass is Abraham Answer. Now we have 5 straight weeks of bent grass. Mm-hmm. So I like him to kind of get it back going. Don't lose 7 strokes around the green. Yeah. That would be bad.
And if you play Answer this week and he fails for you, just stick with him. Go right back to him next week at lower ownership.
Yeah, is he playing the Byron?
I don't know if he'll be in the Byron Nelson. I shouldn't say that. But next time out, like you said, the stretch that we're on.
So Answer and Connors are going to be the two for me from this range, which although Connors is going to be chalk, you can play those two together. I don't think that's a problem. Yeah. And then you can either skip the 9s and go, there's a guy in the 8s that I have 1 star next to him. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm playing that guy. And then we'll figure out the rest from there and mix and match at the bottom. I think that's going to be my main lineup construction. But when we dropped to the 9s, we were talking about Keegan Bradley at $9,600. Wildly overpriced. I love it. I'm using it.
Yeah. I bet him. I think it's a good. I bet him at 35-1. I think it's again a guy that's just been playing much better golf. 3 top 10s in his last 5. Playing better overall. This is a course that sets up for him. He drives the ball well. He can put it out there. He has a great approach game. It's just what, like you said, it's almost. And you talk back even to the year Kyle Stanley won. He was 5th. Again, losing strokes with the putter, of course. That's what he does. But I think, like you said, it's a little bit more okay here. The interesting ones are the ones right below him. Henley should pick up a lot of love. I can actually see a lot of people starting Connors Henley. And I was going to bring this up to you because, like I said, people like this part of the conversation. We've talked about it in the past, the 2v2. So Connors Henley should be popular. Rory and Cam Young, or a $7,900 guy, is a pivot, for example, up top where you can just get extremely different.
Maybe, but it's not like Rory. I can see Cam Young, Rory being a similar start to Connors Connors Keegan, Connors Henley, Connors Woodland. Because those three guys right now, early ownership indicates that's where the ownership is going. I don't think Keegan will end up that high. So I think the interesting conversation is the guys above them, Hatton and Leishman, who no one wants to play.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot more love for Hatton than I do Leishman. And I also think, if Fitzpatrick just keeps taking away from Connors or just keeps getting more popular, because people always play Fitzpatrick either way. Guy doesn't make a lot of bogeys, sets up well for him. He has the complete game. If the score is going to be higher, like we would expect, I'm not sure what your take is on the score this week, but in the past, besides the year that Molinari went off, and even then, he lapped the field. Behind him, the scores were not out there. So
I think minus 13 gets it done.
Yeah, I was going to say, we definitely agreed on that yesterday, just talking about thinking that double digits would be the case. We're not going to see this 8 under or 7 under get the job done here. So agree with you there. Hatton, though, isn't he Fitzpatrick with more win upside, at least in the States, if you talk about it? I know he's more volatile. And
that's the thing. He's more volatile, where you could see Hatton posting 7 over in the first round and be like, oh, great. Then he'll make a run at the cut line.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that he is Fitzpatrick with more winning upside for sure. And even to look at it, was the BMW PGA Championship played at Wentworth in 2020, I guess is my question. Because I think for a lot of the European guys, that is a very good comp course. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that field's much stronger. But Molinari had won that at Wentworth and then came and won at this course the year that he ended up winning at. I think he won at Carnoustie before he won the Open Championship. But you see these sorts of players. Yeah, he did. He won it in 2018. Yeah, it was at Wentworth. Hatton won at Wentworth in 2020. That's a tree line course. You have to be accurate. It's a difficult course. You have to rely on your scrambling, your putting, and your accuracy. And Hatton was able to do that. I mean, he won 2 years ago. Horschel won last year. I really wanted to see Billy at this course. It would have been a nice spot for Billy, but obviously he's not in the field. Rory won in 2014 at that course, in case people are wondering, and lost to Molinari. He was the runner-up. So I guess theoretically he fits this course really well too. So I can see Hatton. I think Hatton would be the preferred play for me. Yeah. Maybe what I was talking about with Fitzpatrick, I'll just use Hatton instead.
I really do like it. And I think like some of the stuff you just chimed in on is even better. Just adds to it. If you want Billy Horschel's temperament, you can get it in Tyrrell Hatton. But just think back to the Masters too. Remember, he just ripped Augusta National for whatever reason. Not likely the spot to do that, Mr. Hatton. But I think in general, he was just frustrated with it. Now he gets a course that definitely suits him better. And I think you want that. We talk too much. I mean, Kenny and I tried to have this conversation yesterday about what is the winning upside conversation. Like they have win equity, but it's so hard to tally out. Like, yes, they can win, but I think it's more about podium upside. And that's why I'm willing to embrace the volatility with a guy like Hatton, because I think it's a higher chance we get that top 3 when he does come through. We've got more guys in the field like that. Hatton, when we talk about him later, or sorry, Homa, when we talk about him later, is very similar. If he comes through, it's like a top 5, top 3, maybe a win. If he doesn't come through, so be it. But that's why you have him in your pool. If you want one of these guys that could come out and just pull a Molinari and lap the field, you need to have the good players in your pool, even though there is some downside to them.
Well, that brings us to Henley. Stats love Henley. DraftKings Sportsbook loves Russell Henley. He's
they
like,
really do.
He's like 10-1. He's like the second favorite. He's like 20-1. But still, it's kind of crazy. I think this is a perfect juxtaposition of what is win equity, Hatton versus Henley. Like It's not like in my mind, it's not even close.
Right.
Like if you told me one of those guys won this tournament, I would tell you the answer is Tyrrell Hatton.
Right.
But if we're talking about a top 10, it's probably Henley.
Yeah, and then I think the conversation goes further when you look at the guy directly below him, who we've already mentioned a couple times here, Gary Woodland. It's what about podium upside there, or top 5 upside, if you want to call it that. Call it whatever you want to call it. He's been doing his thing lately, peppering the leaderboards, top 10s all over the place. Bounced back last week. It wasn't ideal, but it also kind of works in our favor if this course sets up better. He let people down and had to bounce back on Sunday to do the trick for them. He didn't really let it go or choke on Sunday.
He also couldn't putt all week. He lost almost 4 strokes putting over the 4 rounds and absolutely smacked the shit out of the ball the entire week. Yeah. As someone who had him in their main lineup, I was like, oh yeah, can you make a few of these?
Yeah.
That would be nice. Like Friday was horrible on the greens for Woodland. I was like, oh, he's very much in. He was 4 under after day 1. I was like, okay, just keep piling these up.
What was the exacta? Woodland and Finau?
Yeah.
And they're the 2 that lost the most strokes putting by any means, and then battled all the way back, even a T2 for Finau there. Just crazy. But I like Woodland for that reason. And when you're talking about him versus Henley, for that, yes, it won't parse out in the projections or the numbers or all the sites that you're looking at out there. But when you think about just looking at the most recent leaderboards and actual potential for a top 5 here, I think Woodland has the same from what we've seen.
So I like Keegan the best, then Hatton, and then Woodland. Those will be my 3, probably the only 3 I'll end up with in the player pool from the 9Ks.
Yeah.
I fade Henley every week now. I don't feel good about it. It worked at the Heritage. But that was about it. But he lost 4 strokes putting in 2 rounds, which is pretty atypical of him. We are back on bent, which is worse, but guys are going to have good weeks, guys are going to have bad weeks. I remember the first event out of the COVID break, I had bet Webb Simpson. And it was on bent, and he can't he can't really putt on bent. Although if you go look at the numbers, they're like exactly the same between Bermuda and bent. And he had a bad putting week. He was like, I can't use him on bent ever. It's like, okay, whatever. Then he won the next week. It was back on Bermuda, but still, it was the ball striking was off that week. It wasn't so much the putting that was the issue. So I don't want to lean too much on that. I think thinking about positive outliers is much better than thinking about negative outliers when it comes to green types, because you're looking for guys to enhance what they're already doing. If guys have a bad putting week, they're going to have a bad putting week. Guys have bad putting weeks regardless of the surface.
It's going to happen no matter what. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm saying, and that's why I guess it's hard when you say it out loud, Pat. Corey Connors chalk, Russell Henley chalk, people even using them together. It seems like there is the pivots there that we could just go to. The challenge for me, I have a much easier time fading Henley than I do with Connors. Connors is the guy that just goes out and buries you round 1, 6 under out of the gates and just doesn't look back. He's just been so good. And I know it seems crazy, but now I was saying this last night, at 10-1, I don't even think people are scared of it anymore. It's not like a crazy thing to see Corey Connors in this field at 10-1. He's just been that good.
Agreed. And he's just been so consistent. Bent?
Yeah.
A little bit better on bent.
Yeah.
So maybe
every angle, you just, sparsed it out there, and he still came up at the top. He's actually better in this situation, it would seem. So he's the one I have a tougher time going away from. I got no problem with us adding Hatton there, and then I love Keegan, and I think Woodland, like I said, I think now's the time to get back on him, even after people were on him last week. Some ownership will stay with him, but not enough for me to carry. He's not going to be 25% or 20% owned.
No, he's not.
I just don't think it can. Right? We'll talk about it. One reason he could get some and get up to 15 to 17, I think, or more, is just because the 8K range is not that good.
It is, and very few people are using Leishman. Very few people, no one's using Reed.
Yeah.
Even when you look back at what, Patrick Reed had a pretty good week in Mexico, but I have a feeling it was a lot of putting and chipping from old Mr. Reed. Not so much driving or the irons.
And nobody's, just like you said, even if it was the greatest week, no one's going back to him. Patrick Reed is not someone that people like to chase or get back on the next week out. I think this is different than most weeks that we've looked at in the past, where the 9K range is usually 5, 6, 7 guys that were like, holy, we got to find these 4 or 5 in here and parse through it. Up at the top is where that conversation's happening this week with Rory, Finau, Answer, Connors, Fitzpatrick, and even Hatton getting dragged into it. So it's more of the 9K range that's going a little overlooked, and I think we found some good pivots in there.
So let's go to the 8Ks, because there are very few players in the 8K range as well. Casey, Sergio, Homa, Seamus, Jason Day, Webb Simpson, Cameron Young. Cameron Young rates out to be the overwhelming chalk at $8,000. He is a perfect third man in a lot of lineups. The one thing that I did see, that Kenny was calling it back to the Kuchar, that he's $100 less. He's going to be significantly lower owned. I don't like Kuchar anymore. I do realize this setup is much better for him than most other courses, and maybe he's become one of those players where you play him at the courses where he has either previously done well or just completely sets up for what he does well, and this is one of them, so I get that. Seamus Power rating out very high in the ownership. Max Homa rating out very high in ownership. I love Siwoo here, and I love Siwoo anyway, but this $8,400 Siwoo at not necessarily a club down course. This is a course where he can still hit driver, be accurate. And listen, man, the guy has some of the best hands. It doesn't always manifest itself when you watch him, because he has some pretty bad shots from time to time.
Yeah.
But if he has that chipping going, he has touch around the greens. And small greens, short course, I prefer it to be Bermuda over bent, but whatever. I think is a great spot for him.
And he happens to be right below Max Homa, who, when you talk about both
and in between Power and Homa.
Oh, that too, yes. But just talking earlier to our point that we were making with Homa and sort of that boom bust, isn't Siwoo the exact same thing? Right? We know what he can do, and his boom can win the players. So I know it's a little ways back now, but just an example. Played some great tournaments since then, and has more wins since then as well. But just to say it out loud, it's like that's the other guy that does basically the exact same thing. I have a little more interest, again, have to take a risk with this one. I think this decision is solely based on what you did at the Masters, but I think if you played Paul Casey at the Masters, you need to take a shot here. He looked ready to go.
Cursed this week, by the way. Ander cursed this week. And he's carrying more ownership than Sergio. I'd rather play Sergio.
I like them both more than Homa and Kim myself as of now, but I can get behind your Kim take because I'm not as high on the Homa take that other people are on.
Yeah, I can be off Homa. That's fine for me.
Yeah.
If he's going to like push 20%, 15 to 20%. I like Homa a lot. I like him when he's cheaper, and I like it when people are he's a perfect boom bust guy because he can come in with no form and win. So you can catch him at unpopular
5%
times.
and
yeah,
be able
and
to
that's
get
always
out,
a better. It was like, I mean, I was wrong on Cam Champ last week about I don't want to play a 16% owned Cameron Champ. Now, I should have because he ended up being pretty good. But I think that theory applies to Max Homa too. Like, there's too many good guys in this field that I can use who are similar. And I think Si Woo is similar, and he's not going to be 10%.
Yeah, I think he's very similar. So I do like that call actually that you had there. The Cam Young one is interesting just because, like I say, he's going to pop up for everybody. It was, I believe it was RBC Heritage when everyone just watched him dust the field like out of the gate. I think he ended up finishing second there, which was not an expectation at that type of course that Cam Young could come out and get the job done. But everyone was like, oh man, I should have played him. I was on him at the Masters at 7K, and then I didn't play him at the RBC Heritage. Now everyone's going to play him. And not just Kuchar. I love that title, by the way, back to the Kuchar. But below that, the 7.8K range. And I talked to Kenny about this last night, and I'll get your thoughts on it. Just like everyone always looks for the magical pivot. Like if I'm not on Cam Young, it has to be Webb Simpson or Kuchar. You can do it that way. I got no problem with it. You brought up Webb as a potential play there. You mentioned Kuchar, who's right below. But I also think just from a roster construction perspective where people overlook this is you can just avoid landing on that spot or like by getting three $7,600 guys in your lineup instead. And little things like that where the talent level is not that different or the upside is not that different, but you just built a little bit different because I think a lot of people will end up on Cam Young. He fits any build at that $8,000 price tag.
He's the perfect third man in.
Yeah.
So you can go down to Kuchar or even skip that range. If you're looking for the actual pivot at 78, 79, it's Doug Gim is the guy.
Yeah, I like Gim this week.
He does feel a bit overpriced, though, because I really like Streelman. So he's at 77. I'm playing Streelman. So he'll end up being in my lineups. But Day and Webb were the two. I know that Webb doesn't have that many rounds since coming back, but if I just sort by last 50 on courses under 7,200 yards, he rates out number 1 in my stats.
It's worth taking a flyer on based on that, and I'm not doubting you anymore after last week with Martin Traynor and Kurt Kitayama, so I'm thinking about it now, especially for the fact, like I said, there is a potential pivot there. I could go there. I like the Sergio call, by the way, before we leave the 8K range that you brought up from earlier. We know what he can do off the tee, which I think is very important.
And that's the whole thing. Like, when you go and look at his consistency, his irons have been absolute dog shit. The chipping has been bad. The putting has shockingly been good. But the driving, he has lost strokes off the tee once since last year's Players' Championship.
Yeah, didn't talk a lot about it off the top, but that's what I tried to frame up last night. You play a lot of Showdown. We do the free Showdown shows on the Mayo Media Network on Thursday and Friday, and we're oftentimes talking about who's good with approach right now and just needs to find a putter. Well, with Sergio, you got to go the other way, just like in Showdown sometimes. Who's great off the tee that just has to find some irons that I think could find some irons and then has the rest of the game and the ability, and that's a guy like Sergio at a fair price. 8,700 is not a great price, but I think it's a fair price in that mid-range there.
And he's someone that you don't need to use a lot of because no one is using Sergio. It's not fun. Trust me, I've used enough Sergio over the past 7 years to tell you it's not real fun using Sergio.
Yeah, especially after he won the Masters. And then, well, he's back. And then he still sucked in every
horrible,
major thereafter and just horrible from there on out. So, yeah, I hear where you're coming from. But I do think for sure I'm with you. He's an interesting play at 8,700.
Can you go today? Because I can't.
No. Like, was it Jason Scrivener bringing Jason Day along at the Zurich? Like, what? Like, I know that Day's popped up here and there lately, but I have no interest in that. It's almost like the Patrick Reed situation from above. No matter what Jason Day did lately, it doesn't get me interested in hopping on him here, especially, like I said, this 7K range is absolutely loaded this week, and I don't love the 6K range, which we'll get down to later, but I think just pick your spots up top like we've made our stands, and then go crazy in the 7K range because it will be spread out, and most of these golfers will be 10 to 13% or lower.
Yeah, and just try to be right.
Yeah, just pick the right ones. Or the ones that can be, keep saying this, but like last night, the Molinari of the week. Maybe there is no Molinari this week from 2018 that laps the field, but try and find guys that have that podium upside and just pepper this range.
So here's what I'm doing in the 8s. I got to make a decision. I got to see how out of control Brian Herman's ownership gets, because I do like Brian Herman this week a lot, but he's being projected at 13% right now. But as of how many? 1,860 lineups have been generated so far. from Fantasy National. Again, very early in the week. It'll be 10,000 by the time that, or hell, 30,000 potentially.
Right.
Depending on how interesting people find it this week. And I think people are coming back in droves this week because it's been 2 weeks of nothing for golf. Like, no interest. Mexico is going to be fun moving forward. We both said we really like that course.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a fun event. They'll get better players. But this is the first real event since the Heritage.
I agree. And like I said, that was what Mexico brought, but that's for a future situation. Especially too, because I know Byron Nelson's next week, but just in general courses when the wind doesn't come in. Last week there was a bit of wind in Mexico. So I think also if there wasn't, there could have been even lower scores. We would have seen that. And a little bit, people like that. We can come out and just find a birdie fest, get your tour card and move on. So this is the first real week back, though I agree.
But Harman projects, at least in generated lineups, 22% of the lineups generated so far feature Brian Harman in them. Now, I wouldn't expect his ownership to be that high,
right?
But just Fantasy National members, by and large, are using him that way. So we're seeing Keith Mitchell, Brian Harman, Seb Straka, Joel Damon, the Knights who say Smith. Matthew Neesmith is up there. CT Pan is another one. Luke List is another one. Martin Laird is probably projected to be the highest owned of this $7,000 range. I like a lot of those guys. I like Party Marty a lot. I also bet him at 140 to 1. He's been beat down to 110 already. That might be good enough for me in terms of ownership, in terms of my exposure to him. Because I do think that there are some pretty quality pivots in here that are equal. Like Streelman will be right around 10%. I like Streelman a lot. Troy Merritt, who's getting ragged on because of his DraftKings Sportsbook odds because they opened at 35 to 1. He's like 66 everywhere else, but it's making people not want to use him on DraftKings. I think he's a great play at $7,500, and people just are not going to him. And the other one is Lucas Glover. The Glove and Cam Davis, both at $7,200. You put out that really, really strong $7,100 range. Just go right above it. Cam Davis, Lucas Glover, boom. 3%, 6%. Those are the guys.
Yeah, I like to get a gauge because it's Luke List, everybody's favorite. You talked about it. You said this week you like Team No Putt. Every week you like Team No Putt, but Luke List is at the top of your list. And then you have Siwoo Kim that you talked about earlier about Bo Hostler, Hubbard, Taylor Moore, who people seem to liked him last week, didn't really come through. And then of course Marty Laird will be popular. Poston's there as well. But I like the Merritt call. It's interesting that people are going the opposite way from how I would think of that. Like I know DraftKings is off. Most books are at 66, but if they're thinking 35, they're wrong. But at the same time, it makes for a good play at 7,500, especially with the aforementioned CT Pan and Damon picking up a little bit of steam there. The other thing too, you mentioned Streelman a little bit earlier, and I like that. If Harman is going to be even anywhere near 15%, there is so many guys in this range. You mentioned Kuchar. Rye looked pretty good last week, and we kind of liked it. He does have winning upside, at least on DP World Tour. He's got to see what he can do over stateside. But
Lipsky looked good last week too.
He did. Yeah, he's in there. Doug Gim, who you mentioned, even if he picks up a little steam, it seems a bit expensive, so he might not. And then I'm with you on the Streelman call at 7,700. I liked him quite a bit. Troy Merritt. What are your thoughts on Adam Long? Like last week, came out strong, fell off over the weekend, but I actually think, or I would at least feel like this could be a better spot for him where just put it in play, grind it out. But I'm not sure what your thoughts were on him. I was trying to get a gauge at 7,400.
It's two nice performances in a row on two completely different courses, which is nice to see. 12th at the Heritage, 15th in Mexico. This course will play a bit more like the Heritage, although not exactly the same off the tee because, it's a club down course, but you don't need to be accurate at the Heritage. Yeah, you can get yourself into trouble by hitting it into the woods. That kind of goes with any course, but you're not dead if you go into the woods like you are here.
Yeah, you're not dead. I think the placement, and interestingly enough, I talked a little bit on it, but just going through the list of some of the guys we're mentioning, they have played well or fit well at RBC Heritage. And like I say, don't need to maybe as accurate because you can get away with a little bit more, but there is still the premium on trying to get the right placement off the tee, and I think that will still come in handy here. So Alex Smalley, who you brought up earlier, look, Cam Young looks like the best in the graduates right now for what we're going to see, rookie of the year potential, all that, those factors. But Smalley has just been playing some good golf. Of course, sample sizes are going to be lower on him, but I like that. I think that also leads to an ownership that gets kept in check. And then did you hear anything on Denny McCarthy? Because he's the other guy that I'm getting a little bit of buzz on out there right now. Not sure what to do with him. We know he can pop at any given time. Seems like a fair price, worth a flyer. Any thoughts on Denny?
No, not really.
Okay. Schwab,
I could see. I think I like your talking about Aaron Rye a little bit more. So the only guys that I have starred right now from the sevens, Rye, Streelman, Merritt, Steele at 73. who continues to pop up in a lot of stuff that I'm looking at. Glover and Davis. So like 73, 72, 72. Russell Knox was actually the one. Everyone wants to play Russell Knox every single week. Not this week, apparently. This seems like a better course for Russell Knox.
Yeah. It used to be the RBC Heritage for him too. So, go back to that same thought. But I do like Knox. I mentioned it yesterday. I got shut down by my boy Ryan Baroff. Told me it's a terrible play or a terrible bet. But I think for a play on DraftKings at 7,300, it's more than fine.
And that means I can avoid that $7,100 ownership trap. I mean, it might not be a trap, but like you mentioned, List, Poston, Hubbard, Laird, Hostler. Those guys are all going to carry ownership, and people are interested in them this week.
I think someone comes through from there. That's why I posted that one out, because look.
I'm sure, but if I just do the complete fade, that doesn't mean Cam Davis or Glover can't beat them.
No, exactly. I love that call all the time. The fear of missing out, right? We talk about it all the time. Usually it's in like a 9K range, but I said like if you went a 10K and a couple 8Ks, there was potential. It didn't pan out, but the idea of starting that way is a way to just avoid it. Even though a 9K guy is going to come through, it's the same thing here. A $7,100 guy or 2 or 3 maybe will come through, but is it enough to counter with the 7,200 and above guys that you already mentioned?
How do you feel about the very bottom? You know that 0 generated lineups feature Matthew Wolff at a 2,000 so far?
Yeah, probably should be negative, but it's tough, man. Look, he has upside if it's the Matthew Wolff of old, but how he has fell off. This is a crazy situation to see him in this spot. A little bit of craziness with the pricing at 7,000. So, what are your thoughts on him? And then I'm getting a little bit more love for like Grace, Sig, Mac Hughes, the Bentgrass King. You got all these guys down here at 7,000 that you could play, but Matty Wolff is there as the upside guy.
I would throw. I'll probably pass on Wolff. Like if you want any exposure to Wolff, bet Wolff.
Yeah. I love that call, actually. I was just going to say, I called him the upside guy, and let me take that back right away. There has been no upside to playing Matthew Wolff, only downside.
But I think that there's a really nice string here because that 7,100 is going to suck up some ownership. And then when we get into the sixes, I think Kang and Armour are very obvious plays for people that really aren't. I mean, they might turn out to be great, but I think that they're obvious plays for people not really looking all that hard and just going off course history. So I think that they'll retain a lot of ownership in that part. You hit on the 3 names that I really wanted to talk about. 7,000, 7,000, 6,900. Grace, who looking pretty good. Even in the team event looked pretty good. Hughes, this is a much better course for Hughes. Then T Dunks, a week after he was high in the stats. Everyone's off of him. Now might be a time to go back to him because this is a much better course for him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have him. He's the only guy that I have in green in my color coding down here. Yellow, Grace, Sig, and Hughes, and then green on Tyler Duncan. It's like you said, Sung Kang will get some popularity based on the 2 top 10s here back in the day in 17-18, and he even had a 6th back in the day at the Corn Ferry Tour event. So, I mean, there will be a little bit of love for Sung Kang, but I just think going back to a guy like Duncan, what did we play him at? 8,200 at one point there, I think we were playing him at, and I know the field's a little bit stronger, but at 6,900, the potential is there. And then we talk about upside from a DraftKings scoring perspective. I'm not saying it's going to be a crazy scoring event, but if it gets to 13 under, there is going to be enough scoring out there to go around. And at 6,900, he can pay that off.
I feel like that's a Brennan Grace number, 13 under par.
It is.
Get me there. Play a bit difficult. But with Duncan, because you have Stewart at $6,900 as well, and people are really focusing in on fairways and accuracy. I've been trying to make this point all week that there's a difference between hitting a lot of fairways and gaining strokes off the tee. There's a massive difference. Tyler Duncan, 7th in fairways gained, 21st off the tee. Brian Stewart, 2nd in fairways gained, 138th in strokes gained off the tee. That's a very clear distinction to me of who you want to play in that circumstance.
What about TPC Lee, KH Lee down there?
Well, he's got a lot to think about defending his title next week.
That's what I mean. So it's that time of year. It's another course that you never know what you're going to get from. Obviously, it's that boom bust, but I do think that's the opportunity there as well, even over a guy like Sung Kang.
I would rather play Svensson.
Okay.
At 69.
When you had those numbers out earlier, did you get anything on Svensson there? Like, just I was saying this earlier. I was saying, are we done with this guy?
No,
but,
no.
Doesn't this set up better for him?
I think so, especially at a no putt event. I mean, you want a guy who misses 4-foot putts. Call up Mr. Svensson.
Easy guy, yeah, that's your guy.
So him and Smotherman would be the 2 that I would look at.
I do like Smotherman. I think this is another spot I had it marked here that sets up well for him. You mentioned Ryder earlier. I saw somebody, I forget who was on him, but I do think that they made a good case, and I'll probably post it out in the tidbits this week. I just think Sam Ryder is one that we know holds everything out, but even if you don't get that from him this week, I don't think you need that. I think he's a guy that can show enough upside here, so I like him. I don't love the rest of the range, and obviously Armour fits the bill on everything, but is going to be probably the most popular 6K guy we've seen in a while.
The man of many question marks, Johnny. 5 of 6 cuts made right now. Very accurate player. Starting to putt a little bit again. Only one top 10 over that stretch. Against Mexico, Valero, Corrales, Valspar. Missed in Puerto Rico, a pretty long course. And then Honda at a shorter course. I don't hate. I like John Ho. I want to see him do well.
Yeah, well, I want to see him. I want to see him do well for my lineups. I don't really care otherwise, but I think it's an interesting play, at least at 6,500. And like I said, there's just not much down here. Do you see anything on? I was going to ask Nick Taylor, guy that was a bit popular at 7,100 last week, missed the cut. Basically, I believe it was on the number, if not by one over. But like, he's down to 6,600 in this field.
The lowest I'm going, I hadn't really known below 68. I'd smother him in at 68. I like Hayden Buckley. The numbers like Hayden Buckley.
I like him
I don't know
too.
if I like Hayden Buckley a lot, but I will be using some Hayden Buckley at $6,500. Paul's boy, BJ Novak, $6,500. Paul, are you going back to the well after he did you so? He didn't do you dirty. He did you well.
I think he's just like, I don't really know because like he never gets on TV, but like I think he's just like a bomber. So play him at long resort courses and nothing else.
Okay.
I like that.
Kadira is going to be popular at 64. He's going to be the scrub everyone goes to.
Yeah, I don't have much interest. I could see it I think he's like 225 to 1 to win the thing. The Norlander piece that you brought up was a little bit interesting just because, again, you go back to similar type courses and just what he does. And you talked about Brandon Grace being like a 13 under number. That's Henrik Norlander all day. Like, that's what it would require, I think, for him. And then Chesson Hadley, I brought this up last night. He's basically Sung Kang for $700 cheaper in the sense that it's the same results at this course. 8th here in 2018. He actually was 2nd at the Korn Ferry Tour version back then. I'm not a reason to play him. I'm not on him, but I thought it was interesting to bring it up when people look for these narratives. He sort of fits that bill.
Do you remember who won that Korn Ferry event?
The guy that got in the Monday Q, Mr. David Lingmerth?
Lingmerth.
Yeah.
Cam's guy. Take me to your leader, Lingmerth. He doesn't have a DraftKings price yet.
It'll be cheap.
He's going to be super cheap.
6,100 in my guess?
Would you consider that?
No.
How come?
We talked about this last night. I looked it up. He's done nothing else. I don't think that, 2012 was the event he won. Like the event that Kang and Hadley were at was 2013, the Mid-Atlantic Championship.
So he in his past 3 starts, he missed the cut last week in Mexico.
Yeah.
T44 at Corrales, T16 in Puerto Rico. So it's not awful.
Yeah. Doesn't suit it for me, but if you want to go down there,
There's probably not like last week I felt like there was a need.
Yes.
Because there were 3 guys at the top that I knew I wanted to play. I even tried to jam in a 10K and 2 9K guys. That turned out to be the right strategy last week. I just don't feel like it is the strategy this week.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it is. Like I said, we're going to want those made cuts. We're going to want those grinders. We're going to want the guys that can not make the big mistakes and get on the bogey trains. And I think that's where this will be a mistake, going down too low in here, trying to find the diamond in the rough, even if there is a narrative case to go with it.
The Fantasy National Simulator ran 1,000 simulations. Do you know who the top 5 in terms of quote-unquote win equity are in this field? And there's 2 guys way above everyone else.
Rory?
Rory's number 1. That would be correct.
Fitzpatrick?
Webb Simpson's number 2.
Oh, wow.
But that's obviously...
You're getting me sold here, Pat.
That's going back. I mean, you have to kind of come to terms with how do you feel about Webb Simpson right now? Is he the guy that he was when he was winning in Phoenix, coming out of COVID? Probably not. Like, that was probably... I mean, peak Webb is winning the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
But that was over a decade ago. So, like, when we think about peak consistency Webb, it's from the past 24 months up until, like, the beginning of this year when he had the injury. Is he back from this injury? He has made 3 consecutive cuts. His ball striking has been okay. The putting has been horrendous for Webb, which it was before he reached, like, all of a sudden he went from being on the worst putter on tour to, like, the best putter on tour for a 2-year stretch. Is he back to being that other guy, or is this just a little mini blip and he'll get it together?
I think the bigger question is it worth the risk? And
Yeah,
it definitely sounds like it is.
I think it is.
And funny enough, when you go back to that 2v2 I mentioned earlier of like a Connors Henley, you can basically find that little $100 or $200 for the Rory Webb, which happened to be 1-2 in the simulator. Again, it's not all about the simulator. It's more about the idea of something out there for Webb says it's a better spot. And then you factor in the Cam Young ownership at 8,000. There's just so many ways to make it a good GPP play because we don't know shit going in. We say this all the time. We know these are very educated guesses. We're dialed in. We're finding information. We're trying to put it all together and make it make sense. But at the same time, if you can find any angle like that where it actually makes sense, and it does, it's worth the risk.
Andrew Novak, according to the simulator, is the best $6,000 play.
No. If he is, then Paul might win all the money. But he said he's even off him this week. So I believe he was the guy he's playing that he should not play. So that you should not play. So like Raza style there. I'm not interested in Novak this spot.
Looking at it too, it's funny because you mentioned Cam Young. I used Webb instead of Cam Young. Cam Young is third in the simulations in terms of win equity. He and Finau are both tied. Then it's Hatton, Henley, Cooch, Connors, Casey, Herman, Cam Davis, Adam Svensson, Siwoo Kim, Russell Knox.
Wow. And I love that actually that you brought that up because on the podcast with Kenny last night, we talked about another strategy where when everyone looks for a pivot, like move to Webb off Cam Young, another way to do it is actually just to play them both together. Because while everyone's looking to move off of one of them or not play the other, you put them both together and you can give yourself a really unique build, especially in this tournament where the 8K range is likely to go a bit overlooked.
In terms of cut equity, Andrew Novak is not the best $6,000 play, shockingly enough. We are seeing Svensson as the number one made cut percentage of anyone in the $6,000 range. Novak would be second in that. Who else do we have? Adam Schenk.
It's crazy because Svensson, I just looked, isn't he? He's missed like 3 of his last 4 cuts.
It's a simulation.
Yeah, I know. And like you said, it really does set up better for him. I think that's another key component where you just got to look at what the courses are that they've played. So,
how you feeling about like Seb Straka?
Yeah, the $7,600 range was another one. I brought this up earlier and then we didn't go there. But like Straka, we talked about it, but I overlooked it. Straka, Neesmith, Damon, and Griffin, that's where like I think a lot more people are going above or below based on what we talked about heavily and where we went with stuff. So that's where I think you can get a bit different this week if you play like Straka, Neesmith, Joel Damon, all in the same lineup. Those 3 guys all can put it in the fairway and find it, have upside, have the ability to get to the top. Straka won recently, so you've got all these factors put together. And then Neesmith fits that RBC heritage narrative that we were talking about a little bit earlier as well.
So does Vaughn Taylor, but I don't like Vaughn Taylor.
No, me neither. Too old.
Too old. Can't take his stuff. He's too old.
You're already playing Kuchar. You can't be playing.
I'm not playing Kuchar.
Oh, okay. I was going to say.
You can go back to the Kuchar. Not so much for me. Play the best plays.
All right.
That usually works out pretty well. If we play the best plays, then we can try to figure out who the good plays are. Connors, I think, is number 1 in this lineup.
Yes.
Connors, then Henley? Connors, Henley, Cam Young?
Henley. We can fill in like the first 5 probably. Cam Young. We got to put Laird in there.
Yeah, Laird is most definitely in this lineup.
And what happens if we put Armour?
Oh my God.
It's like this is the play the best
What
plays.
kind of man eats Armour hot dogs?
Oh my gosh.
So here's the lineup. It builds itself and leaves $100 on the table. Connors, Henley, Homa, Cam Young, Laird, Armour.
Yeah, but you know where it landed the way I talked about it and it built out. It landed on exactly 8,700
for Sergio.
For our guy Sergio. It's not the best. He's not the best plays
No,
lineup.
he won't be in the best plays lineup.
He won't be in the best plays lineup, but if you want the pivot, that's definitely where I would go.
Yeah, and then you use all your salary cap. And I know some people love to do that. I think that this is going to be a very common lineup this week.
The funny thing is, I mean, we talked about it on the show now, so I'm sure someone will roll it out there and have it with the Sergio version, of that, of course. But
I'm playing it.
Do you think? Yeah,
I play these every week.
Yeah, I play them too.
They usually cash.
That's the funny part. I play them.
They have zero upside in terms of like winning a GPP, but it's usually like good for a min. Like if you ever were looking for a cash or head-to-head lineup, to play the best plays lineups is usually pretty good.
Yeah, play it in some head-to-heads for sure. And I think that's the thing too, is just if we didn't talk about this though, I wonder how many people would actually end up with this exact build. I don't even know if it would be that many. You see like Sky, our boy Sky, puts out the dupes report.
It's never as much as you think, but that's not really the point.
No.
At the same time, this isn't NFL Showdown where you're going to split a top prize with, like 800 people or something. But 4 of these guys are going to be pretty similar. And then you're playing 2v2 versus 3,000 people.
Yeah, my favorite thing to talk about is what you just said. I love that. Everyone, I don't want to be duped. It's not about being duped. You're not likely to be duped. You're building the same way everyone else is. So that's why on Sunday you're like, oh shit, I was one guy off here and he's dusting you by 30 points because he has an eagle, made a hole out or whatever it was that's just got you crushed and you're just dead. Now you just sit there on Sunday.
Yeah, you have zero chance to catch up. And when you're trying to embrace the volatility of golf a little bit, having a few outliers in the same range is really key because all of a sudden, and Connors, I think, is a pretty good example of this, although I'm going to be using Connors. I have faith in Connors this week. If you just wanted to use Answer instead of Connors, you get them at 1/3 to 1/4 of the ownership. Their win equity is about the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So if Answer hits, you then box out 4 times as many people.
And that's the thing. If you found the Vegas odds on a head-to-head, it's not going to be like 3-1 or you would be all over it. And that's kind of what you're going to be getting here from an ownership perspective.
Bets for the week. I put them in because, as you know, as I keep talking about, I'm very excited to go away, by the way, if you haven't noticed.
I can tell.
I
would be too. It's going to be a great trip.
I haven't been away in so long.
Yeah.
This is just very exciting. No kids, too. I haven't been away since I've had kids.
Okay.
And my youngest is almost 2. My other one is over 3 now. So we're getting there. I think the last time that we were away, I think we found out we were pregnant about 2 weeks later. So
Could happen again. Paul Barjan, the land of love.
No,
you're headed out to?
Unless it's by Long Dong Paul Barjan. I don't know if we're
It's not
going to
be done.
So here's what I got rolling
right.
out here for the bets.
All right.
I'll tweet these out later on as well. Probably won't have the newsletter this week because I don't give a shit anymore. Connors and Abraham answer. 1-2 dual forecast. So any order, first and second, Connors and answer 350 to 1, which would lead you to believe that I'm also betting Corey Connors 22 to 1, Abraham answer 35 to 1. I've seen that number beat down now. You can still grab it at 30. I would still grab it at 30. Those are the 2 plays from the top. See, woo, Kim, 55 to 1. Is it 55 to 1 or 60? 55 to 1. You can probably get it at 60. I missed out on that. Maybe I can go back and try to. They're giving me full cash out on that right now. Kevin Streelman and Brian Harmon 70 to 1 and 80 to 1 with the top 5 each way. And then Martin Laird 140 to 1 with the top 5, and Hayden Buckley 225 to 1 with the top 5. Those are the bets this week.
I like it. I like the Buckley one too. It's a good one.
It's gonna be bad.
Yeah, I think he's
So bad.
better DraftKings play than that because you'd want him like a top 40 bet or something. But you want to try and win the big money with it, and you get a top 5 with it, so it all makes sense. But I think a good DraftKings play that you brought up earlier at $6,500.
I'm in. You got any bets so far?
Yeah,
Keegan?
I bet Keegan 35. I stayed up top pretty much. I bet Cam Young at 4. I bet all the guys that are probably good fades on DraftKings. Power at 50. I think it's dropped some already, and then I went Laird 140, and my 225 to 1 was Ryan Armour. Never know. I think with the top 5, I'm feel very comfortable with those last 2 just because that's what they're likely to do if they pop and show the upside. And they're tougher to play on DraftKings just based on roster construction and ownership in general.
Play in the DraftKings Listeners League for the PME, rake-free, 3 max entry. Let's fill that up right now. Link is down in the description. Become a member at fantasynational.com, fantasynational.com/Mayo. You've heard how Tambo and I have just utilized some of these stats when we're doing our research, and you can try to figure that out for yourself and try to come up with your unique stuff. You can use the simulator, lineup generator, track the ownership percentages in real time, fantasynational.com/Mayo. Smash like your 2 favorite 6K plays down in the description, and tune into the Fantasy Golf Degenerates with Tyler Tamboline and Kenny Kim and play in their Listeners League as well. No live chat this week, but you can catch Tambo Thursday night on Mayo Media Network, along with the guys from RunPureSports.com, as they'll be doing their showdown show after round 1 and after round 2 Friday night. Yeah, Friday. Thursday night and Friday night, Run Pure Sports is on Mayo Media Network, so please go check that out as well. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!